My parents used my sister's illness as an excuse to neglect me for my entire life. So when I grew up and became successful without them, they found out and started making demands under the guise of family. But I kicked them to the curb, and now they won't stop begging for forgiveness. I don't have many dark secrets. Well, actually, I don't have any at all, except this one specific one that really haunts me. And I've been keeping it from my family for years. I knew it would blow up eventually, but I didn't expect it to literally happen last Thanksgiving. Buckle up. This is a wild one. I, 36F, practically grew up as the classic forgotten child archetype. Well, only from the age of 9, because that's when my Aunt Jen showed up at our house at 3 a.m., telling me to pack a bag because Mom was in the hospital. You see, she was pregnant, and my sister Charlotte was coming early, like 2 months early. The next few weeks ended up being a blur of hospital visits and hushed conversations. Charlotte was tiny. She looked like one of my porcelain dolls, but only if my porcelain was covered in tubes and wires. I tried to touch her, but then my dad slapped my hand away. That was the first time I felt it, this invisible barrier forming between me and my family. When they finally brought Charlotte home, our house transformed into this sterile bubble. Mom became obsessed with germs, industrial strength disinfectant everywhere, hand sanitizer stations in every room, constant cleaning. The smell of bleach still makes me anxious to this day. And maybe this wouldn't have been so bad. But then came the part that really messed me up. Whenever I showed even the slightest sign of being sick, I was immediately booted to either Grandma Dorothy's or Aunt Jen's house. At first, my childish brain thought it was a little fun. Grandma would bake cookies, while Aunt Jen had this cool collection of novels I was working through. And eventually, I figured out what's happening. It got to the point that I would wear triple layers of leggings in winter, just to avoid getting sick. But still, all their attention went to Charlotte. So I tried to get positive attention. I did everything I could to become my parents' dream child. Straight A's, no cussing, winning every science fair. I even managed to recite 10 different poems in Spanish. And in response, my dad just told me not to recite too close to Charlotte, in case my saliva gets on her and she gets sick. But the real gut punch came when I was 13. I'd spent months teaching myself to play Bridge Over Troubled Water on piano for the school talent show. Charlotte coincidentally had a fever the night of the show. Guess who had no one in the audience? Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, the entire extended family, including both sets of grandparents, showed up for Charlotte's 15-minute recorder recital. Charlotte saw this, and she quickly learned how to work the system. By age 8, she'd outgrown any real health issues. But of course, that didn't stop the performance. Headache? Had to stay home from school. Feeling tired? Someone else, guess who, should do her chores. Worried about a test? Mom would literally call the school to get the deadline extended. I retreated more and more to my bedroom, burying myself in books about art history and antiques. My room became my sanctuary, mostly because Charlotte claimed she was allergic to my vanilla air freshener, so it was the one place she wouldn't go. Then, the tables turned. Instead of avoiding being sent away, I started being grateful. I didn't even care whether it was me or her who got sick, because either way, I'd get sent to Grandma Dorothy, who would actually ask about my day or care what I was up to. She became a sort of motherly figure. She was the one who got me interested in vintage jewelry. Meanwhile, the only time my parents even mentioned my name was to say some BS like, "Oh, Charlotte just needs more attention because she had such a rough start. Taylor's always been so independent. Taylor understands her sister has special needs." But no, I did not understand. I was a kid who couldn't figure out why having a healthy immune system made me less deserving of love. But hey, at least it taught me self-reliance. When nobody checks your homework or cares about your achievements, you learn quickly to be your own cheerleader. But here's the thing about being invisible. No one's watching your failures or your successes. So do whatever the hell you want. To say I took advantage of this would be an understatement. In just a few months, I changed the course of my life forever. My parents couldn't believe it, and Charlotte finally got what's coming. To this day, I still tell people what I did because I'm so damn proud of myself for it. I would tell you, but I don't have time to in this short video. Click the link or go to my channel to watch it. I don't have many dark secrets. Well, actually, I don't have any at all except this one specific one that really haunts me, and I've been keeping it from my family for years. I knew it would blow up eventually, but I didn't expect it to literally happen last Thanksgiving. Buckle up. This is a wild one. I, 36F, practically grew up as the classic forgotten child archetype. Well, only from the age of 9, because that's when my Aunt Jen showed up at our house at 3 a.m. telling me to pack a bag because Mom was in the hospital. You see, she was pregnant, and my sister Charlotte was coming early, like 2 months early. The next few weeks ended up being a blur of hospital visits and hushed conversations. Charlotte was tiny. She looked like one of my porcelain dolls, but only if my porcelain was covered in tubes and wires. I tried to touch her, but then my dad slapped my hand away. That was the first time I felt it, this invisible barrier forming between me and my family. When they finally brought Charlotte home, our house transformed into this sterile bubble. Mom became obsessed with germs, industrial strength disinfectant everywhere, hand sanitizer stations in every room, constant cleaning. The smell of bleach still makes me anxious to this day, and maybe this wouldn't have been so bad. But then came the part that really messed me up. Whenever I showed even the slightest sign of being sick, I was immediately booted to either Grandma Dorothy's or Aunt Jen's house. At first, my childish brain thought it was a little fun. Grandma would bake cookies, while Aunt Jen had this cool collection of novels I was working through. And eventually, I figured out what's happening. It got to the point that I would wear triple layers of leggings in winter, just to avoid getting sick. But still, all their attention went to Charlotte, so I tried to get positive attention. I did everything I could to become my parents' dream child. Straight A's, no cussing, winning every science fair. I even managed to recite 10 different poems in Spanish. And in response, my dad just told me not to recite too close to Charlotte, in case my saliva gets on her and she gets sick. But the real gut punch came when I was 13. I'd spent months teaching myself to play Bridge Over Troubled Water on piano for the school talent show. Charlotte coincidentally had a fever the night of the show. Guess who had no one in the audience? Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, the entire extended family, including both sets of grandparents, showed up for Charlotte's 15-minute recorder recital. Charlotte saw this, and she quickly learned how to work the system. By age 8, she'd outgrown any real health issues. But of course, that didn't stop the performance. Headache? Had to stay home from school. Feeling tired? Someone else, guess who, should do her chores. Worried about a test? Mom would literally call the school to get the deadline extended. I retreated more and more to my bedroom, burying myself in books about art history and antiques. My room became my sanctuary, mostly because Charlotte claimed she was allergic to my vanilla air freshener, so it was the one place she wouldn't go. Then, the tables turned. Instead of avoiding being sent away, I started being grateful. I didn't even care whether it was me or her who got sick, because either way, I'd get sent to Grandma Dorothy, who would actually ask about my day, or care what I was up to. She became a sort of motherly figure. She was the one who got me interested in vintage jewelry. Meanwhile, the only time my parents even mentioned my name was to say some BS like, oh, Charlotte just needs more attention because she had such a rough start. Taylor's always been so independent. Taylor understands her sister has special needs. But no, I did not understand. I was a kid who couldn't figure out why having a healthy immune system made me less deserving of love. But hey, at least it taught me self-reliance. When nobody checks your homework or cares about your achievements, you learn quickly to be your own cheerleader. But here's the thing about being invisible. No one's watching your failures or your successes. So do whatever the hell you want. To say I took advantage of this would be an understatement. In just a few months, I changed the course of my life forever. My parents couldn't believe it, and Charlotte finally got what's coming. To this day, I still tell people what I did because I'm so damn proud of myself for it. I joined every club that wouldn't interfere with my part-time job at Murphy's Diner, thanks to Barb, the owner, who remembered my birthday when my own parents forgot. Debate team? Check. National Honor Society president? Check. Editor of the school paper? Check. Debate team was where I really found my voice. There's something deeply satisfying about dismantling someone's argument while maintaining perfect composure. It also taught me how to negotiate, which I didn't realize then would be useful later. I won state twice. My parents couldn't attend either competition because Emma had major soccer games. She was on the C team and didn't even play. Junior year is when things really got interesting. I took the SAT and got a perfect score. Not like, oh, pretty good, perfect. I mean perfect. 1600. Do you know how many people get that? Less than 1%. I remember staring at the results screen for like 20 minutes, convinced it was a mistake. I rushed home to tell my parents. I know, stupid. Mom was in the kitchen helping Emma with her English homework. The conversation went something like, me. Mom, look, I got a perfect SAT score. Mom, that's nice, honey, but can you keep it down? Emma's trying to concentrate. She has a big test tomorrow. Emma, yeah, some of us actually have to study, Miss Perfect. Mom, Emma, sweetie, don't stress. You're just a different kind of learner. I still have the hard copy of those SAT results somewhere. Never made it to the fridge. But Emma's C+ in English? That baby got prime refrigerator real estate with a, we're so proud of you, magnet. The college application process was interesting. I applied to 15 schools without telling anyone, wrote all my own essays, gathered my own recommendations, handled all the financial aid paperwork myself. My guidance counselor, Ms. Wilson, was the real MVP. My parents were too busy to help with the FAFSA, so I stayed after school. Then the acceptances started rolling in. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Northwestern, each one coming with a scholarship offer. I kept them all in a locked box under my bed, knowing what would happen if Emma found out. They'd suddenly make it all about her. But if Taylor goes to Harvard, I'll be all alone. Or some nonsense. The day I got my full ride offer from Northwestern, Emma made junior varsity cheerleading. Guess which one was celebrated with a family dinner? Hint, I had microwave mac and cheese in my room while they went to Olive Garden. But you know what? That scholarship was my golden ticket. Tuition, room, and board covered, plus a book stipend. I could finally leave that house where I was either invisible or inconvenient. The day I got my acceptance package, I went to my favorite spot in the local library, a third-floor window seat overlooking the park, and cried for an hour. Not sad tears, relief tears. When I told my parents at dinner I was going to Northwestern, they were concerned. Dad, Northwestern? But that's so far away. What if Emma needs you? Mom, I hope you're not expecting us to help with expenses. Emma's cheerleading competitions are very expensive. Emma, crying. Oh my God, finally. Can I have your room? I need space for my TikTok videos. I worked double shifts at Murphy's Diner that summer to save money. Barb, bless her heart, always gave me extra tips and made sure I got to take home leftover pie at the end of my shifts. She also taught me a valuable life skill, how to spot genuine people in a world full of fakes. Honey, she told me, in diners and in life, the ones making the most noise usually have the least to say. Move-in day at Northwestern? My parents couldn't come because, surprise, Emma had a cheerleading competition. Aunt Jen drove me instead, helped set up my dorm room, and handed me an envelope with $500. Your grandma Dorothy wanted you to have this, she told me. She's so proud of you. Later, I learned grandma had been saving that money from her Social Security checks for months. That first night in my dorm room, I made myself a promise. I was going to build such an amazing life that being overlooked would be impossible. Not out of revenge, not to prove anything to my family, but for that 9-year-old girl who used to get sent to grandma's house for sneezing. College flew by in a blur of all-nighters, ramen noodles, and glorious independence. I joined the Antiques Appreciation Society, a perfect excuse to spend hours discussing vintage jewelry techniques and history with like-minded people. I even organized a small exhibition in our student union featuring borrowed pieces from local collectors. Nobody in my family attended, of course, but it was a turning point for me. For the first time, other people were seeing value in the knowledge I'd accumulated. I graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern. Not that my parents noticed. They were too busy helping Emma transfer to her third college in 2 years. But here's where the plot takes an unexpected turn. I landed an entry-level job at Blackwell & Jenkins Auction House in Chicago. I won't use the real name for obvious reasons, but if you're in the business, you probably know who I mean. A legitimate high-end establishment, lots of old money clients, that kind of place. I started in their estate sales division, cataloging belongings of wealthy people after they died. Not exactly glamorous, but it paid the bills. My first few months were pretty standard, logging countless china sets, cataloging vintage furniture, etc. Then came the Westfield estate. Mrs. Westfield was an elderly widow who died with no children, leaving behind what everyone assumed was a large collection of costume jewelry. This is where those hours at Grandma Dorothy's paid off. I'm going through this pile of jewelry when something catches my eye. It's an Art Deco brooch. Nothing flashy, but something about it felt different. The weight was wrong for costume jewelry. The clasp mechanism was too sophisticated for a knockoff. I think I spent my entire lunch break that day researching vintage jewelry makers and signatures. I ended up staying late at the office to use the company's subscription to various antique jewelry databases. The more I looked, the more convinced I became that this wasn't costume jewelry. This was the real deal. Problem was, I was the new girl. No one would believe me if I claimed we had a potential treasure on our hands. So I did what debate team taught me. I prepared my case meticulously. I spent 2 weeks during lunch breaks and evenings learning everything I could about Art Deco jewelry authentication. I even used some of my pathetic excuse for savings to pay for an online gemology course. Finally got the courage to approach my boss, Mr. Parker. I brought the whole presentation, comparative images, historical documentation, the works. The conversation went something like, me, sir, I think we might have something significant in the Westfield collection. Parker, barely looking up from his phone. Taylor, we've already cataloged those as costume pieces. Me, I know, but look at these maker's marks. They match perfectly with Cartier's 1925 signatures. Parker, finally paying attention. Where did you learn all this? Me, I did some research. Long story short, the costume brooch sold for $42,000 at auction. Turns out it was part of a limited collection made for some European duchess in the 1920s. But here's the real kicker. Parker started trusting me after that. He began giving me other pieces to authenticate. Suddenly, my useless hobby of sorting vintage jewelry had actual value. I threw myself into learning everything about antique jewelry. I took every online course I could afford. I spent weekends at estate sales studying pieces, even started a small notebook documenting different authentication processes. My apartment looked like a jewelry scholar's fever dream, with walls covered in printouts of vintage hallmarks and certification guides. The auction house started seeing results. I was finding important pieces others had overlooked, developing relationships with collectors, understanding the market. My commission checks got bigger. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was saving money. My family, still remarkably uninterested. At Sunday dinners, which I still attended like a fool, the conversation went like, Mom, Taylor's still at that antique shop, right? Me, auction house. And yes, actually, I just authenticated a rare Tiffany piece. Emma, interrupting, oh my god, speaking of jewelry, you guys have to see this charm bracelet I bought at the mall. But I didn't care anymore. For once in my life, I had found something wholly mine, something I was genuinely good at, something that had nothing to do with being Emma's sister or the family disappointment. Then came the Harrington collection. This was about 2 years into working at the auction house. Massive estate, old money family, lots of buzz in the industry. I was part of the team cataloging their jewelry collection, and that's when I spotted it. A fairly ordinary-looking Art Nouveau piece everyone else had passed over. I spent 3 days researching it, barely slept. It turned out to be a piece from a famous French jeweler's private collection that was supposed to have been lost during World War II. When it sold at auction for $218,000, Parker called me into his office. I thought I was getting a promotion. Instead, he said something that completely changed the game. Taylor, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication business. At first, I brushed it off. Me? Start a business? With what money? But the idea took root. I started doing small freelance authentication jobs on the side. Word spread that I had an incredible eye. Private collectors began reaching out directly. One night, I was sitting in my modest apartment surrounded by jewelry reference books and authentication tools I'd slowly accumulated when it hit me. This was something I could actually do. I could build something of my own. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I took out a huge loan against my car. I emptied my savings account. I rented a tiny office space in a less than desirable part of town. People thought I was crazy. Maybe I was. I transformed a storage room above a Chinese restaurant that was about the size of a college dorm room. The rent was cheap because it always smelled like Kung Pao chicken, and the Wi-Fi only worked if you sat in the corner by the window. But it was mine. The first few months were interesting. And by interesting, I mean terrifying. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. in cold sweats, calculating how many months until my savings ran out. Loan payments felt like a noose around my neck. My office furniture consisted of a card table from Goodwill and a chair I literally found on the curb. Don't worry, I sanitized it thoroughly. But in the world of high-end jewelry, reputation and connections are everything. And my time at the auction house had given me both. I started small, doing authentication work for local antique dealers. My fees were lower than the big firms, but my attention to detail was becoming known. Word spread. 6 months in, a breakthrough happened. A dealer I'd worked with at the auction house asked about authenticating a collection of Victorian-era brooches. The owner wanted verification before selling. It turned out to be a massive collection, with pieces from 3 generations of a family. I worked on it for 2 weeks straight, barely sleeping, documenting everything. I discovered 2 extremely rare pieces that had been misidentified as later reproductions. The owner was so impressed with my detailed analysis that she not only paid my fee, but offered me a 10% commission when the pieces sold. That commission? $76,000. More money than I'd made in the previous 2 years combined. Suddenly my phone was ringing. A lot. Private collectors hearing about my knack for spotting overlooked pieces. Estate lawyers seeking opinions on inherited jewelry. Even my old auction house started sending me authentication work. I'm pretty sure Parker was secretly helping spread the word. Thanks, boss. By year 2, I'd hired my first employee, Mia, a recent geology graduate who reminded me way too much of myself at that age. Super smart but overlooked because she was quiet. She's now my head of authentication and worth her weight in gold. The business grew faster than I could have imagined. Moved to a proper office downtown. Goodbye, Kung Pao chicken smell. Built a team of specialists. Developed a reputation for finding lost pieces. You wouldn't believe how many important historical jewelry pieces get misidentified as costume jewelry in people's attics. Around this time, I also had my first real chance to help Grandma Dorothy. She called me one night, clearly uncomfortable about asking for help. Her house needed a new roof, a $15,000 expense she couldn't afford on her fixed income. I transferred the money to her account that night and told her it was an advance against future jewelry consultations. We both knew it was a fiction, but it preserved her dignity while allowing me to help the one person who'd always been there for me. But success came with its own challenges. The bigger we got, the harder it became to keep it a secret from my family. They still thought I worked at that little antique shop. Emma would make these snide comments during family dinners. Emma, Taylor, I have some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill. Maybe your little shop would want it. Me, having just authenticated a $1.4 million Fabergé item that morning. Sure, I'll take a look. Mom still introduces me to everyone as my other daughter. She works with old jewelry or something. Meanwhile, I was quoted in Forbes, thankfully under my company name, and we just opened our 3rd office. The weird part? Keeping the secret became almost enjoyable, like this private joke with myself. I'd sit at Sunday dinner in my Target clearance outfit, actually Prada, listening to Emma talk about her entry-level marketing job, knowing I'd just closed a deal worth more than her annual salary. I even started playing little games with myself, like wearing authentic Harry Winston pieces to family gatherings to see if anyone would notice. They never did. Emma once spent 20 minutes showing off her expensive $250 Michael Kors watch. I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe worth more than her car. By year 5, we'd established offices in Chicago, New York, and Boston. I spent more time on airplanes than in my own bed. We built a reputation for discretion. Turns out a lot of wealthy people want their jewelry authenticated without the rest of the world knowing. I met an oil magnate's widow once who arrived after hours through the service entrance, terrified that her stepchildren would discover she was having the family collection appraised before making changes to her will. I've authenticated pieces for celebrities who didn't want the press knowing about their jewelry investments. I've even been flown to foreign countries on private jets to verify collections before major auctions, all while my family thought I was working inventory at some local antique mall. The money was insane. Like, we need to hire a team of financial advisors insane. Still, I maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. I bought a nice but not flashy house in a good neighborhood. I drove a high-end but not obvious car. The only place I truly splurged? My home office. State-of-the-art authentication equipment. The best security system money could buy. A custom-built vault that would make Fort Knox jealous. The irony? They thought I was being frugal to help them. Mom would say things like, "It's so sweet of Taylor to help out. She must be eating nothing but ramen to manage it." Meanwhile, I just authenticated a collection that earned me a commission larger than their mortgage. You know what's strange about success? The more you have, the harder it becomes to explain to people who've always seen you as less than. It's like trying to describe color to someone who's only seen in black and white. They lack the context. By this point, my company was doing extremely well. We had cornered the high-end jewelry authentication market in the Midwest, and our reputation was solid gold, pun intended. But every Sunday, I'd drive to my parents' house for dinner, playing Taylor the modest antique shop worker. The cognitive dissonance was becoming ridiculous. I'd spend my mornings on conference calls with Dubai collectors, my afternoons authenticating million-dollar pieces, and my evenings at my parents' house in carefully selected normal clothes, eating Mom's overcooked pot roast while Emma dominated the conversation with stories of her latest marketing triumph. Usually something like bringing her boss coffee without spilling it. One Sunday stands out particularly in my memory. I had just completed a huge deal, authenticating a missing Cartier piece that had been sitting in someone's safe deposit box for 40 years. The commission alone? 7 figures. I drove straight from the meeting to my parents' place, still buzzing from the successful authentication. Mom, Taylor, honey, is everything okay? Your clothes are looking a bit worn. Me, oh, trying to save money, wearing a $2,800 cashmere sweater I'd purposely chosen for its understated look. Emma, well, if you'd gotten a real job instead of playing with old jewelry. Dad, Emma, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you. I nearly choked on my pot roast trying not to laugh. The anonymous transfers, monthly payments to my parents, began around this time. Aunt Jen told me they were struggling to pay Emma's student loans and medical bills. Mom casually mentioned they might have to sell the house. I couldn't let that happen. Despite everything, it was still the home I grew up in. So I started an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,000 to their account. When questioned, I claimed I was giving $1,000 by living on rice and beans. They assumed the rest came from Aunt Jen or other family. Emma, of course, took credit for inspiring family members to help. The money helped, but it also had unexpected consequences. My parents began treating me with this weird mixture of pity and patronizing pride, like I was some noble poverty case, sacrificing everything to support the family. Meanwhile, Emma's spending became more extravagant. She'd show up for dinner with new designer bags, claiming they were outlet finds. They weren't. I can spot an authentic Gucci from 20 paces. She started taking lavish vacations and bragging on Instagram about her #blessed life. I'm pretty sure she was using my support money for shopping sprees, but I kept quiet. The irony was just too delicious. Then came the MBA drama. Emma announced she wanted to go back to school for her MBA. Another private university, of course. Only the best for the golden child. Mom called me in tears, explaining how they couldn't afford it. Me, maybe Emma could look at state schools? They have good programs too. Mom, oh honey, you don't understand. Your sister needs to maintain certain Standards. But speaking of helping, could you increase your monthly contribution for a few years? I increased it to $7,000 per month. My accounts didn't even notice. But watching them praise Emma for taking initiative with her education, while assuming I was living on ramen to help out, that stung a little. The real kicker? I was giving a guest lecture at the same business school Emma wanted to attend. My family didn't know that. The dean personally invited me to give a seminar on luxury goods authentication and business growth. I had to make up an excuse for why I couldn't attend Sunday dinner that week. During that lecture, I kept wondering what would happen if Emma walked in. Would she recognize me? Would she tell my parents? The fear of exposure still haunted me, even as I stood there talking confidently to a room full of MBA students about valuation methods for historical artifacts. The cognitive dissonance was getting harder to manage. My own achievements started to feel like a separate life, like I was some corporate superhero with a secret identity. By day, I was running a multi-million-dollar authentication business. By night, well, Sunday evenings, I was just Taylor, the disappointing daughter who worked at an antique shop. The weight of the lie was becoming heavier. Every time Emma made a snide comment about my career, every time Mom apologized to her friends for my modest lifestyle, every time Dad suggested I get a real job, there were moments when I almost came clean, like when Dad mentioned struggling to pay for his blood pressure medication, and I wanted to tell him I could cover it without even noticing. Or when Mom talked about postponing a needed dental procedure because insurance wouldn't cover it. Each time, I just quietly arranged for more money to appear in their account. I started seeing a therapist to deal with the mounting stress of my double life. Dr. Levine became my sounding board, the one person besides Aunt Jen who knew the truth about my life. You're enabling their behavior, she would tell me. Giving them money without boundaries is reinforcing the dynamic. She was right, but I wasn't ready to face the consequences of honesty. I think I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't expect it to implode so spectacularly on Thanksgiving. It started 2 weeks before the holiday. Mom called, crying about her back pain. She'd been diagnosed with a herniated disc, and the thought of cooking Thanksgiving dinner for 20 guests was overwhelming her. Now, I'd like to tell you I offered to help purely out of goodwill, but honestly, I was tired of pretending her dry turkey was edible. Me. Why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered. Mom. Oh, honey, we can't afford a caterer. Me. Don't worry about the cost. I've been saving up. Mom. Concerned. You're not taking out a loan, are you? I arranged everything with a high-end catering company I use for business events. They do incredible work, the kind of food that makes you wonder why you ever bothered cooking yourself. It cost more than my parents thought I earned in 2 months, but whatever. Thanksgiving morning arrived, and I was feeling pretty good. I had my laptop with me because I needed to monitor a major online auction in Hong Kong. This gorgeous Art Nouveau necklace was up for sale, and I had a client interested in authentication if they won the bid. The meal arrived on schedule, and everything was perfectly arranged. Emma, of course, had to comment. Emma. Store-bought stuffing? Really, Taylor? Mom's is so much better. This from the girl who once set off the smoke alarm making toast. Mom kept apologizing to everyone for not cooking herself, but you could tell they were enjoying the meal. Emma shut up after tasting the maple-glazed Brussels sprouts, which, by the way, cost more per plate than her weekly grocery budget. Between dinner and dessert, I stepped away to check my laptop. The auction was getting interesting, and I needed to be prepared in case my client won. I set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept exactly the same since high school. Meanwhile, Emma's room had undergone 3 renovations. That's when everything went sideways. I had left my authentication program running with several tabs open showing various accounts and current contracts. Emma came in without knocking. Some things never change. To borrow my phone charger. She saw my laptop screen. She saw this as her chance to finally expose how pathetic her older sister was. Emma, smirking. Let's show everyone what Taylor's really been up to. Before I could stop her, she grabbed my laptop and walked into the dining room. Picture this. 20 people, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and my parents, stuffed with gourmet turkey and half drunk on expensive wine they thought was from Trader Joe's. Emma, time to see what kind of important work Taylor's doing on Thanksgiving. She flipped the laptop around triumphantly, apparently intending to embarrass me with whatever minor antique transactions she assumed I was working on. The room went completely silent. Like, you could hear the fancy clock I got Mom for Christmas. She thought it was a reproduction, ticking softly. My screen displayed current account balance, $14.7 million. Pending authentication contract, $425,000. Recent transaction, $1.2 million. Hong Kong auction. Company quarterly profit report, $3.8 million. Emma's face cycled through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. The final one landed somewhere between shock and nausea. She actually swayed slightly on her feet. Emma whispers, "This can't be right." Mom. Emma, honey, what is it? Emma, voice cracking. She's rich. Taylor's rich. If possible, the silence deepened even further. Then Mom started laughing, like, really laughing. Mom, don't be silly. Taylor works at that little antique shop. I stood up carefully, smoothing out my basic cashmere sweater that cost more than their monthly mortgage. Me. Actually, Mom, I own one of the largest jewelry authentication companies in the country. Have for years. Those antique shop comments? I authenticate pieces worth millions. That little business you never asked about? It has offices in 3 cities. Dad choked on his drink. Aunt Jen dropped her fork. Uncle Dave started coughing violently. Then Mom's laughter transformed into something else. Her face turned red, then purple. She stood up so fast her chair fell over. Mom, screaming, "You have millions, and you let us struggle." Me. Struggle? I send you $7,000 every month. Mom, while sitting on millions, your sister has student loans. So there it was. Not congratulations. Not, wow, we're so proud. Just outraged that I hadn't given them more money. Emma started crying. Surprising, I know. Sobbing about how she deserved to know and how I'd betrayed the family. Dad joined in. Dad, how could you be so selfish? We're your parents. We raised you. That's when I lost it. Years of being overlooked, years of dismissal, years of being treated as the family disappointment. It all came pouring out. Me. Raised me? You shipped me off to grandma's every time I sneezed. You missed every achievement, every award, every milestone because Emma might feel left out. You never saved a penny for my college but took out loans for her private school. And now you're mad that I built something for myself? The next 5 minutes were chaos. Mom screaming about family obligations, Dad yelling about ungrateful children, Emma alternating between sobbing and demanding to know exactly how much money I had. Meanwhile, the fancy catering team tried to serve dessert while looking extremely uncomfortable. I grabbed my laptop, took my Hermes bag, which Mom had previously complimented as a nice knockoff, and walked out. Behind me, I could hear Mom already discussing how to spend my money, something about Emma's MBA and a new car. As I drove home in my sensible car, a limited edition BMW, my phone started blowing up with texts. The family group chat exploded. Emma started posting on Facebook about hidden family wealth and selfish siblings. The days after Thanksgiving were like watching a hurricane hit in slow motion, except the hurricane was my family, and the debris was my sanity. Within an hour of leaving dinner, my phone had 52 missed calls and over 200 texts. Mom followed this fascinating progression. 7:42 p.m. How dare you walk out on family? 8:15 p.m. We need to talk about this like adults. 9:03 p.m. Your sister deserves a share of your success. 10:30 p.m. I've already called a realtor about houses in better neighborhoods. 11:45 p.m. Why aren't you answering? This is your mother. Meanwhile, Emma had gone full social media warrior. She wrote a massive rant on Facebook about how her millionaire sister had been hoarding wealth while watching her beloved family struggle. The comment section was insane. Distant cousins and former high school classmates I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my moral character. But this is the part that really got me. Emma actually posted, all those years of me trying to help Taylor's career, giving her advice about moving up from that little antique shop, and she was secretly wealthy. The betrayal hurts so much. I nearly threw my phone across the room. The only career advice she ever gave me? She suggested I try selling jewelry on Etsy. The flying monkeys arrived next. Aunt Susan, who I see maybe once every 3 years, called to tell me that family is everything. Uncle Bob, who I'm pretty sure still thinks I'm 12, emailed me a lengthy lecture on the importance of sharing wealth. Even my third cousin's wife's sister, how did she get my number, felt compelled to share her thoughts on family obligation. But the real fun began when they showed up at my workplace. I walked in Monday morning to find Mom, Dad, and Emma sitting in our reception area. They told Jenny, my receptionist, they had an appointment for authentication services. Emma clutched her Michael Kors bag like it was actually worth something. The conversation went about as well as you'd expect. Mom, we've discussed it as a family. Me, a family discussion without the family member you're discussing? Mom, ignoring me. And we think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone. Emma, I need at least $2 million to start my new life properly. Dad, and your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking a beach house in Florida. Me, did you miss the part where I've been sending you $7,000 monthly? Emma, that's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us. Me, I owe you? For what exactly? The years of being ignored? The missed graduations? The constant comparisons? Mom, don't be dramatic, Taylor. We gave you everything. Me, no, I gave myself everything. And you know what? I'm done. Right there in my own office lobby, I took out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers to their account. Mom gasped like I'd slapped her. Emma started her fake crying routine but quickly stopped when she saw it wasn't working. Then things got ugly. They refused to leave. I had to call security. Watching my 60-year-old mother being escorted out while screaming about ungrateful children was surreal. Jenny asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no, but I did have their names put on the building's do not admit list. The harassment continued for weeks. New phone numbers, fake email addresses. They even tried to reach me through my company's customer service. I finally had to issue a formal legal notice threatening harassment charges. Mom then played her final card. She called Grandma Dorothy. But here's the thing about Grandma Dorothy. She's smarter than all of them combined. Her response? Good for Taylor. About time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms. Mom didn't speak to her for 2 months after that. It's been 6 months since Thanksgiving. I moved to a new house with better security. Changed all my numbers. The company? We're doing better than ever. Turns out my family drama attracted several high-profile clients who respected my discretion in the situation. Emma continues to post passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. From what I hear, she's starting her own jewelry authentication business. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad finally stopped trying to contact me when my lawyer sent them an official letter outlining how harassment charges would impact their lives. They're now telling everyone they never wanted my money anyway, and they're praying for my soul. The best part? For the first time in my life, I feel free. No more Sunday dinners full of subtle insults. No more downplaying my achievements to spare their feelings. No more financing the Emma show. My therapist says I'm finally establishing healthy boundaries. I say I'm finally living authentically. So that's my story. Thanks for letting me share it. Special thanks to the catering company who sent me a Christmas card saying the Thanksgiving dinner was the highlight of their year. Edit. Responses to common questions. Yes, I'm still in therapy. No, I don't regret cutting them off. Yes, Grandma Dorothy is doing well. She's coming to visit next month to help me catalog a new collection. One last thing. To Emma, because I know you're probably reading this, that Cartier bracelet you're wearing in your latest Instagram post, definitely a fake. Just saying.